This is a developer's response to VideoGamesEurope's statement on Stop Killing Games. The start of their document, their subtitle, Why Providing Continued Support Do Not Work for All Games, is intentionally misleading and wrong. Nobody is asking for continued support. Okay, on to my response.
Decisions to discontinue online services are multifaceted and must be an option,
The translation is, we want the option to take away your money, shut down the game, and pretend it's an impossibility to let you preserve it. The reality check is nobody's saying companies can't shut down servers. There's outrage because they refuse to provide technical tools for the community to keep the game alive on their own time and dime, even when the publisher's long done profiting. If a company pulls the plug, fine. But withholding the tools to prevent the game from vanishing entirely, that's just anti-consumer, plain and simple. The truth is that shutting down their servers is their right, and making sure the game dies forever is actually their business strategy. Spoiler, if players could keep the game alive themselves, they'd realize how unnecessary most of these shutdowns actually are.
Private servers aren't viable due to player safety and illegal content, and unsafe communities,
Translation. We billion-dollar corporations famous for data leaks and toxic communities are very worried about your safety. The reality check is that private servers exist across countless games and often feature better moderation than official ones. Games like Minecraft, Counter-Strike, Valheim, Team Fortress 2 all thrive on player-hosted servers with moderation tools, and nobody's dying from it. Unsafe content is a lazy scapegoat. Communities self-moderate everywhere. Forums, Discord, gaming servers. It's been done for decades. Worried about data security? Major companies EA, Sony, Ubisoft, Capcom have all suffered massive data breaches affecting millions. Their protection argument rings hollow given their track record. Participation in private servers is voluntary. The same consistent principle applies across the entire internet, whether it's joining a Discord server, a modded Arc server, or browsing community forums. Painting private servers as inherently dangerous ignores this reality and infantilizes consumers capable of managing their own risks as they already do across digital spaces. But sure, let's pretend your average community Minecraft server is somehow more dangerous than centralized databases leaking personal information every other year. The truth is that private servers aren't the threats. Losing control over player spending and player engagement is. Spoiler, if private servers were truly unsafe, half the most popular games in history wouldn't still be running on them.
Online-only games designed from the ground up. Proposals would curtail developer choices,
Translation. If we make it dependent on our servers, we can kill the game whenever we want. Giving players options, that's against our business model. The reality check. Online only doesn't magically mean private servers are impossible. It means the company chooses to lock down the server software. Game developers already operate internal server builds for testing and development. They have full access to the source code, build pipelines, infrastructure, and preparing a community hostable version is a straightforward engineering task, which is measured in weeks, not years. The complexity often cited by these companies is drastically overstated, especially compared to what unpaid modders achieve without these resources. Games like Minecraft, Valheim, and Counter-Strike still prove that this isn't rocket science. It's a standard practice when companies aren't deliberately building games to self-destruct post-profit. Developer choice isn't the issue. The player choice to preserve, to host, to enjoy the product that they paid for is what's being deliberately eliminated. The truth is, they aren't defending creative freedom. They're defending the freedom to yank your purchase away. Spoiler, if online only by design truly mattered, modders wouldn't be able to bring dead games back to life. But they do it constantly.
Significant engineering challenges. Oh, that's prohibitively expensive, Decades, years worth of work,
Translation. It's technically impossible because we say so, and we're definitely not lying about the complexity. Reality check. As someone who's been developing games and software for over 25 years, let me be crystal clear. The so-called significant engineering challenges are largely manufactured talking points. In reality, modifying software to operate without central servers, particularly when you have the source code and internal knowledge, is a routine development task. Game studios already iterate on these systems during development, so packaging a stable, community-usable build is well within normal software engineering scope. Are there technical hurdles? Sure. Legacy code bases, third-party licenses, or proprietary integrations sometimes complicate preservation, but these aren't insurmountable barriers. They're solvable engineering tasks. The real issue isn't feasibility. It's companies choosing control and planned obsolescence over consumer rights. Music licensing restrictions? Well, trivially removed and replaced during the end-of-life process. Platform service dependencies that can't be released, replace them with open source alternatives or remove them entirely. These are generally API calls, not some mystical interdependency. But they're integrated so tightly with everything. Bullshit. It's API calls and service layers. Standard software architecture that any competent developer can modify. PEGI compliance for discontinued games? Well, they're pulling the game from the market. Compliance obligations generally end with commercial availability. If modders can reverse engineer solutions without source code, developers can implement workarounds with source code in a fraction of the effort. The truth is, this whole years or decades timeline is a laughable one to anyone who's actually architected these systems. They want you to believe what they do internally for testing is somehow impossible to package for community use. Spoiler, every insurmountable technical barrier they describe gets solved by unpaid modders within months of a game's death.
Haha, third-party licenses and complex game design make preservation impossible, huh?
Translation. It's way too hard to untangle our game spaghetti or replace licensed content, so tough luck, you lose access. Reality check. Let's be fair, sometimes third-party licenses complicate preservation. Music rights, middleware, cloud services, they can expire or have strict redistribution clauses. Some older games have licensing paper trails so buried it's easier to rewrite the whole feature than to hunt down the contracts. Live service games with deeply intertwined server logic may take serious work to untangle for community hosting, but here's what they aren't telling you. This isn't an unsolvable mystery. Developers with source code and internal tools can replace removed license assets in weeks, just like they do during regional censorship, re-releases, or platform ports. Middleware swaps and code refactoring? Well, those are standard engineering tasks, which, yes, are annoying, sure, but routine for studios. If modders reverse engineering games in their spare time can strip DRM, rebuild servers, or replace copyrighted music, professionals with the full tool set can do it faster and better. This problem isn't the player's fault. These impossible scenarios are a product of the company's own choices. How they structured their game, what contracts they signed, and which tech they integrated. Now, they're framing their self-inflicted engineering debt as your problem. Well, you paid for the game. You didn't architect the licensing mess or choose fragile server dependencies. They did. Future compliance solves this by design. If Stop Killing Games results in legal protections, companies will have to account for preservations before launch. That means clear licensing terms, modular server design, and straightforward end-of-life pathways built in. The "it's too hard" argument evaporates when preservation isn't an afterthought but a legal requirement baked into development. The truth is, yes, edge cases exist, but they're the exception, not the rule, and even when they arise, they're the result of business decisions, not technical impossibility. In rare cases, legacy systems, abandoned middleware, or convoluted licensings can create genuine hurdles, but they are the exception, not the rule. Most obstacles are surmountable with proper planning. Shifting the blame onto players is corporate deflection, plain and simple. Spoiler, if preservation-friendly laws pass, those unsolvable problems disappear. Not overnight, but by design. The only thing standing in the way is companies dragging their feet to preserve their control over the player.
Haha, this will hurt investments, cause jobs, and reduce consumer choice, haha.
Translation. If we can't hold your games hostage, our business model collapses, and that's somehow your problem. Reality check. If companies already are investing millions in games that flop immediately, end-of-life planning is a fraction of that cost. Fewer jobs, the same companies laying off thousands while posting record profits are suddenly concerned about employment? Less consumer choice? Taking away games reduces choices. Keeping them playable increases choice. This is the same industry that spends more on marketing than development, crying poverty over basic software engineering. The truth? They're not worried about jobs or investments. They're worried about losing control over when and how you access what you quote-unquote purchased. Spoiler, if preserving games truly hurt the industry, we wouldn't have decades of successful gaming built on titles that never disappeared.
Haha, games are licensed, not owned. Clear intellectual property rights, haha.
Translation. We use ownership language when we want your money, and licensing language when we want to take things away. The reality check is that the VGE wants it both ways with their licensing framework. When selling, purchase the game, buy now, add to cart. Every storefront uses ownership language. When taking it away, actually, you only licensed it, so we can revoke access whenever we want. Even physical cartridges and discs were technically licensed content. The difference? There's no remote kill switch. Microtransactions also expose the charade. When someone drops $50 on a cosmetic item, the store says purchase complete, not license temporarily granted. The truth is that what they really want isn't to clarify licensing versus ownership. They want revocability. At the core, this isn't about safety, technical complexity, or innovation. It's about preserving the legal authority to revoke your access after payment clears. They want digital products to behave unlike physical goods, revocable, controlled, and disposable on their terms alone. Spoiler, if it's truly just licensing, why continue using purchase language in marketing? Because license this game for an indefinite period subject to arbitrary termination doesn't really drive sales.
Haha, existing consumer protection laws provide adequate safeguards, haha.
Translation. The current system that lets us do whatever we want is totally fine and doesn't need changing. Reality check. If existing laws were sufficient, we wouldn't have this problem. SKG campaign exists because current protections are inadequate. Companies announce shutdowns with minimal notice, continue selling right up until the servers die, and claim existing laws protect consumers. Well, how can they allow people to buy games even after announcing a shutdown, sometimes with just hours until death? If that's legal under current laws, the laws are broken. Fair notice? Buying a game and discovering it dies within a month seems awfully predatory and potentially illegal. What about all those microtransactions in games about to be killed? Where's the fair terms and protection there? The truth? Current laws protect their right to take your money away and disappear your games, not your right to access what you purchased. Spoiler, if consumer protection was working, companies wouldn't be brazenly selling games knowing they will be dead within weeks.
Haha, we support preservation through museum donations and libraries, haha.
Translation. We gave some old games to museums, so we're totally the good guys here. Reality check. Museum preservation does not equal player access. Donating copies to a museum while ensuring no one else can play it is performative preservation. Look, you can view our game behind glass in a museum isn't the same as you can continue playing the game you purchased. This is like burning all copies of a book except one in a library, then claiming you support literacy. Real preservation means continued playability, not creating digital artifacts for researchers. The truth is that museum donations are public relation moves that cost them nothing while ensuring they maintain control over who can access their games. Spoiler, if they actually cared about preservation, they'd make games preservable, not just museumable. The real reason: control, profits, and lock-in. Here's what they're not saying out loud. They want to control microtransactions indefinitely. They want artificial scarcity, so you have to buy the next game. They manipulate in-game economies for profit. They harvest your data, monetize it, and protect it right up until the next headline-making breach. They want the legal right to reach into your digital library and delete what you purchased. This isn't about safety, legality, or technical hurdles. It's about companies keeping control long after they've cashed the check. As someone who's been writing software for over 25 years, developers already run local servers during development. Turning those into community tools is pretty easy, actually. Private servers, they're often more safer, more fun, better moderated than official ones. Centralized servers, well, these are regularly breached, mismanaged, or entirely abandoned, but hey, player safety, right? The excuses in the statement: textbook deflection from anti-consumer planned obsolescence. Every impossible technical challenge they describe to get solved by unpaid modders within months. Sometimes years, but, they don't have the actual tools to do so efficiently and effectively. Now, this one isn't actually in their statement, but it's a common sentiment.
Haha, games need to sunset to make way for new experiences, haha.
The translation: we shut down your favorite game so we can sell you a slightly shinier version. Rinse, repeat, profit. The truth is, sunsetting isn't about innovation. It's about eliminating competition from their own better older products. Spoiler, if the new game was truly better, players would just choose it instead, but they yank the old one offline to make that choice disappear entirely. But wait a second, let's think about this. Why are these consumer problems? The translation is that here's a bunch of problems that would affect us, the developers and publishers, framed as if you, the consumer, should care. Reality check. Let's be clear about whose problems these actually are. Engineering challenge? Company problem. You paid for a working game. Cost and investment risks? Company problem. They made billions, they can figure it out. Reputational harm from private servers? Company problem. Not your job to protect their brand. IP rights and licensing constraints? Company problem. They signed those contracts, not you. Competition from community versions? Company problem. Competition is good for consumers. Third-party service dependencies? Company problem. They choose those dependencies. Fewer jobs in the industry? Company problem. And usually bullshit anyways. As a consumer, why should you care about any of this? You gave them money, they gave you a game. End of transaction. The truth is, they're trying to make their business problems into your moral obligations. It's corporate gaslighting at its finest. Spoiler, when a restaurant closes, they don't get to take back every meal you ever ate there, but somehow in gaming this logic is supposed to make sense. This really highlights how manipulative their framing actually is. They're essentially saying, think of the poor billion-dollar corporations while trying to make consumers feel guilty for wanting to keep what they paid for. Final mockery summary. Private servers are not experimental. They are a proven, decades-old norm across major gaming ecosystems. Like I said before, Minecraft, Counter-Strike, Valheim, to name a few, technically enabling them is routine when companies cooperate. Communities often implement moderation and security measures exceeding official efforts, contradicting fear-mongering about safety risks. Corporate servers? Well, these are historically insecure, profit-driven, and designed for lock-in, not player safety. The real obstacles are business models, DRM, and refusal to provide tools, not technical challenges. Their statement is a bad faith deflection, hiding behind safety, while history shows it's about control, profit, and planned obsolescence. The licensing double standard exposes their real motivation, keeping the right to revoke your purchases at will. Current consumer protection laws clearly aren't working if companies can sell games hours before killing them. Museum donations aren't preservations. They're PR stunts while ensuring continued control. As someone with 25 years in the industry, their technical excuses are outright lies, and anyone with actual development experience knows it. Gamers, developers, lawmakers shouldn't buy the spin. The industry can do better, and players deserve ownership over what they paid for. The gaming industry thrives on innovation, but true innovation empowers players. It doesn't revoke their access. It's time for lawmakers, consumers, and ethical developers to push back against artificial scarcity and disposable culture disguised as progress. Games deserve to live, players deserve to choose, and excuses deserve to be dismantled. If you got this far, I thank you for listening. If you want a written version of this, it's in the description. Any responses in the comments are highly welcomed. Have a great day.